PROLIM.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Weisenberger. I'm an application engineer with PROLIM Solutions. I want to welcome you to the PROLIM LunchByte series. In today's LunchByte, we'll be taking a look at what's new in Solid Edge ST9. This is part one of a two-part series. For today's agenda, we'll be taking a look at the user interface and some application enhancements, as well as part and sheet metal enhancements. Some of the application enhancements include the new Pack and Go feature, custom settings and preferences management, some cloud licensing options, as well as the new design manager. Inside of the part and sheet metal environments, we'll take a look at the new solid sweep command, a new hybrid display option, spiral curves, and then a few other enhancements. So let's go ahead and get started. So when you start up Solid Edge for the first time, you'll notice the new application menu. This utilizes the Microsoft user interface from Office 2013, has some reorganized pages for easier discovery of content, and some also new color themes supported. So when you go in and create a new or do open, it's going to take up your entire screen. That just makes it easier to look at maybe recent files you've opened up, or all of your file templates that you've created under the new option. It's just a much cleaner, fresher looking way to display the information, and again, it's tied to the Microsoft Office 2013 user interface. You have all the same options that have always been there, it's just displayed in a new updated format. When you start a part or an assembly document, you'll notice there's a new tab that's on by default called Data Management. This is going to help promote some new data management workflows, some of the new capabilities for our built-in data management that we'll talk about in part 2 of what's new in ST9. It also has a link to the new design manager, which we'll talk about a little later on in the PowerPoint, which will give us our full revision capabilities that we need. One of my favorite enhancements on the user interface is the new tab documents. All of our open documents will now appear in a tabbed, organized form along the top of the graphics window. Makes it easier to find what files you're looking for. There's also a right-click menu that gives us options like close, close all but this, new window, copy file path, open containing folder, etc. So some really good options there, and just a new, fresher way to display what documents you have open and make it easier to change between those documents. With ST9, we now have cloud-enabled Solid Edge. What this means is that your license file will live on the cloud, and you'll have a login to start Solid Edge. You'll use your WebKey logon, which assigns the product to a user, not a specific machine. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but your personalized settings, they're now available anywhere you log in, and I'll tell you how we can do that. You also have the ability to install maintenance packs and updates from the cloud, but only really when you want to. So you aren't forced to do it, but you do have the option, and you'll be notified when there are new maintenance packs. Solid Edge itself is installed and run from the local device. So if your internet goes down, your Solid Edge session does not. You have to log in with the internet, pull your license file over the internet, but once you get Solid Edge up and running, you no longer need the internet, so you don't have to worry about any performance issues. That means your performance is also fast, regardless of whatever your internet speed is. Now, some reasons when you might want to still use perpetual licensing, such as node locked or floating, is if you don't have a reliable internet connection. Maybe you're doing some sort of government work, or you have other security policies where you only have an intranet and not an internet connection, or you just don't need the portability. So it's fine then to stick with those node locked or floating options. Speaking of options, you have the freedom to choose how you want to purchase and deploy Solid Edge now. Some flexible purchasing options such as perpetual versus subscription-based licenses, whether you want to do monthly or yearly options. You can also do node locked or floating, which we've had in the past, and now the new cloud-based license option. As I said, the cloud option, you can transfer your user preferences and settings from one machine to another. It also gives you notifications when there are maintenance packs to install. So some reasons to go to that cloud-based license option is a faster deployment. You lower some of your administration and IT resources and costs, and your ongoing maintenance is a lot simpler. When you start up Solid Edge using the cloud-based option, you'll be presented with a login screen where you'll log in with your WebKey access code, your WebKey login and password. Once you log in, then it'll notify you on that startup screen if there are any maintenance packs and if you can download them. And again, once you get Solid Edge up and running, you don't have to be connected to the internet anymore. Talked about being able to bring your custom settings and preferences with you from one session of Solid Edge to the next. We can do that with the new Settings and Preferences wizard. This has the ability to capture and deploy any settings and preferences to and from a zip file. Some of the things that can be stored inside of this are your registry settings, your app data files and folders, which include all of your custom themes, preferences, and any of your template files. You also have the ability to deploy and capture these settings on startup of Solid Edge and exiting of Solid Edge. I'll talk about that in just a second. You also have the ability to restore the Solid Edge factory settings. So if you maybe messed up some of the customizations, you want to go back to out of the box, you can always restore those custom Solid Edge settings without having to do maybe a complete uninstall and reinstall. So I talked about being able to capture and deploy these custom settings. This is going to work well with the new cloud-based licensing option. Inside of Solid Edge options under user profile, you can turn these settings on to capture and deploy your settings when you start up Solid Edge and when you close out of it. What this will do is maybe you're at work, you did some customizations to your user interface in Solid Edge. If you have this option on to capture your settings when you close out of Solid Edge, it'll remember all those customizations you did. When you go log into a new machine or go home to log in and do some work, it'll then deploy those settings that you maybe made the changes to at work. So you don't have to worry about customizing everything over and over again at all the different locations that you might want to use Solid Edge. You can have it automatically do all of that for you. So some really cool options with the new Settings and Preferences wizard. Another great enhancement that we've been asking for a long time is a pack and go option. This is really simple and easy to use to be able to copy an entire project or set of documents. You have access to the command either inside of Solid Edge or the Design Manager, which we'll talk about in just a second. Some different options that you have included here are if you want to include the drawings and simulation results, if you want to copy all of the files to a new single folder or to maintain that existing folder structure. At the bottom, we can also choose to save to a folder or to create a new zip file, which then you could share with another user or email to someone if you needed to. So some great functionality built into the new Pack and Go option inside of Solid Edge ST9. Talked about the Design Manager. This is a new modern application. It is basically just a facelift of the old Revision Manager that provides us a new fresh look and feel. We have all of the same functionality, but again, just an updated feel to it. In ST9, our Insight Connect has been split into two applications, the Design Manager and then also View and Markup. Just a note, from ST9 onwards, there's no separate standalone setup for Insight Connect. Also, when you install Solid Edge, it will not deliver the Solid Edge viewer anymore. There's a couple new launch points for the Design Manager in Solid Edge in the Windows Startup menu. Inside of Solid Edge under Tools, you'll see the Design Manager option as well as under your Start menu, Solid Edge ST9. You can also right-click on any of your files and do a Open in View and Markup or Open in Design Manager. So like I said, it's just a new modern user experience. Makes it easier and more powerful to use. Just gives us an updated look. We have some new keyboard shortcuts that are available to use inside of Design Manager to help selecting all files or specific files that you need to select and deselect. We can also show custom properties or columns that we created, including our Solid Edge status. We can also add and remove any columns that we want. So some great new functionality built into the Design Manager. Our variable table has a new layout. We have the option to do grouping. So this is a new structured view. We can group based on features, which will then hold their associated variables underneath them. This then kind of replicates our Pathfinder, which is easier to use and to find those variables that we need. So you can see at the top, we can switch between structured view, list view, or do a multi-column sorting. You'll see on the left we have the different modeling types, whether you created the features in synchronous or ordered. Under each one of those environments, we can then see the different features that were created, whether they're patterns, round sketches, things like that. And underneath each feature, then we see all of the variables listed. At the bottom, then again, we have all of our PMI dimensions and any user variables that were created. In the assembly environment, we'll see things listed like assembly features, assembly relationships. If we created maybe an offset on some of our assembly relationships, we can drive those values through here. And any sketches or 3D sketches that we might have created as well. We can also do multi-column sorting now. So we can sort by one thing, such as the type, then by another thing, such as units, and then by another thing, and so on. So just like you would do in Excel. The variable rule editor, we can now use variables as the limits. So if I want to create a min and max limit, I can set that and say it has to be greater than an existing variable in my variable table or less than another value. I can also do my variables in a discrete list. So I can limit maybe a value to existing variables in my variable table. So you can see at the bottom I've got variable B, which is 10. I could type in a value, maybe 60 millimeters, and then have it also be limited to variable A, which in this case is also 200 millimeters. So some cool options now with the variable rule editor. We also have logic functions now added. So we can do if statements. We can also do some other functions, inverse trigonometry, such as sine and cosine, and some conversion between radians and degrees. But the big thing here is now the ability to create logic functions. Our material table has been enhanced, some new sorting and display options. We can do ascending or descending sorting. Some different display types that we have are the library display, which we've seen in the past. We now have the library display descending, so we can change the order that it goes. We have a group display, so we can group by the subcategories that you might have created. We also have a material display, so that we can list all of our materials together from all of our different material libraries. So some new sorting options here in the material table. Also with the material table, we have an option now to check and update out-of-date materials and gauge properties. You have an option set in the Solid Edge options to have it automatically do that. We can also go into the property managers, for instance, in an assembly and check to see if all the materials are up to date. We get some visual feedback when we go into the material table. Values will be highlighted yellow if they're out of date. We then have the option to update those material properties if we need to. Another great enhancement for those of you that do hybrid modeling, which would be both synchronous and ordered together in the same part environment, is that we can now display the ordered model when we transition back into the synchronous environment. So you get kind of a ghost image of that ordered material on top of the synchronous model. This makes it easier then to maybe see what will happen with some of your synchronous edits. How will your ordered model update to match that? So some great display options here and usability with the new displaying of your ordered models in the synchronous environment. With our multi-body parts, we can now create features that go across multiple bodies, things like cutouts, revolve cutouts, rounds, chamfers, holes, or patterns. You can create them then so that they intersect more than one body. New in ST9 is the solid sweep command. We can produce cutouts from a solid body using another body as our tool. This would be useful in things like milling operations. We can also do a swept body where we actually create material using this operation. This supports both 2D and 3D paths. Our tool doesn't have to be cylindrical. If it is cylindrical though, the tool axis is automatically selected for us. For non-cylindrical tools though, you have to go in and select your tool axis step. You also have the option if you want to place that tool on your path sketch or not. So you can see in my pictures down below there, if we don't have the tool on the path, it'll just follow the orientation of the path, but where the tool is actually located. If you turn the option on though, the tool will be moved over to where the path is and do the cutout over there. So some cool options with the new solid sweep command. I'll show you a little bit about that in just a minute. We also have the option to create blocks inside of sketches. This works in the assembly and ordered part environments. So we can create then these blocks by dragging them in from the feature library and place them into ordered sketches. Kind of the same workflow used in the draft environment. What this does is allows us to use those blocks then for maybe layouts of assembly lines or other things like that. This can also be used later on to do the new duplicate component in the part environment, or to do feature patterns and things like that. Speaking of the duplicate component, we can now do duplicate feature or body in the part and sheet metal environments. To do this, we're going to use the blocks that we just talked about, or coordinate systems, to define the position and orientation of those instances. Things we can duplicate are faces, features, and bodies. We can create those patterns on multiple planes or faces. The position and orientation of each one of those instances is determined by where our blocks or our coordinate systems are located. And again, this is supported in synchronous, ordered, or sheet metal environments. New to the Helical Curve command is an option for creating spirals. We used to have to create spirals doing a curve by table and knowing all of the coordinate positions for that curve. We can now just create a spiral curve inside of the Helical Curve command. So some really cool options. We can create this in both synchronous and ordered environments, and that allows us to create features using that curve then. Things like doing the new solid sweep command, which I'll show you in just a little bit. And finally, we also have the associative mirror in the synchronous part. On the command bar, there is a persist option now, where we can maintain that mirror between the mirrored geometry and the original geometry. It'll be associative across the mirror plane that you've created. There is an option to break that mirror if you want to. You can do a right click and say break, and then the geometry is no longer associative back to the original. So just a nice new option here inside of the mirror command in the synchronous environment. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at these on some example files. For our demo today, we're going to be using the ZoomX Sol juicer. Real quick before we get started, I just want to do a quick overview of the enhancements to the user interface of Solid Edge. If we come over to the application button, we can see kind of the new options here, the new layout. When you click the application button, it takes up an entire screen with, in this case, the open and recent file option. If I go to new, I can see a list of my templates that I've created. In this case, I'm set to an ANSI standard, but I can again go into edit list and create my own customizations in here, my own template list. That'll be displayed in this window or open. You can adjust these settings and what you want it to open up as to when you start Solid Edge for the first time, whether you want it to be open on the open window or the new window or up here on learn, which used to be kind of the old startup screen, some of the options we had there. So again, you can drive that through the Solid Edge options. I have it set to the open option because I like to open up files from my recent files, bring them open again, and do some more work on them. So again, you can drive that through Solid Edge options. Back here inside of Solid Edge, you can see we have a list of tabs of all of our open documents along the top. I can right click on any one of those and create a new window. I can close everything but that window. I can copy that folder path or open the document folder, things like that. So a lot of great options there in that right click menu. The other thing that's new is our data management tab, along the top here. This is on by default with the default theme inside of Solid Edge. Inside of here we have some great options for creating things like revisions, doing a where used. We can start the new design manager from here as well. We'll talk more about this tab in part 2 of what's new inside of Solid Edge ST9, but again, just keep this in mind, there's some great options inside of there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What I want to do is switch our display configuration here and take a look at some components on the inside of the assembly. We're going to focus on this part here to start with, so I'm going to edit inside of that. Now you'll notice when we open this part up, it is a multi-body part. It is also a hybrid part, so that means I've done work in both synchronous and the ordered environment. I'm actually going to roll the model back into the synchronous environment. We'll take a look at it there. You'll notice when we do that, we can still see the components that were created down here on the handle in the ordered environment. So that is new for ST9. You can see those hybrid components when you switch back into the synchronous environment. So what I want to do is come down here and select this component, and I'm actually going to just flip this around so it's a little easier to see. We're going to rotate that. So I'm going to move my steering wheel to the center point here, and we're going to rotate that about 20 degrees. You'll notice once I place that, our handle will update then to match those changes, and it'll recalculate the ordered part on top of that synchronous change. So that's awesome that we can see that any changes we make to synchronous appear on the ordered parts as well. I'm also going to drive this part in a little bit just to shorten it up. You'll see symmetry picks up the other side. I'm going to drive that in 15 millimeters. Again, our ordered part updates. Alright, next thing I want to do is turn on a sketch here. I'm going to flip this around again. I'm actually going to grab the region on the inside of the sketch. We're going to do a cutout with that. And we have a new option here though on the extrude command. This allows us to cut the active body, so only the body that I'm working on right now. So if I switch to that option and extrude that up, it's going to cut the dark gray part, but we aren't doing anything to that kind of lighter black part. Again, this is a multi-body part, so in the past all we would do is cut the active body. Now I can switch that option to selected body. You see how at preview it's going to cut through my multi-body part. I can accept that. It shows me what parts it's going to cut through. I'm going to right click and accept that and create that cutout then through the multi-body part, which is new for ST9. I'm going to put that cutout on the other side, so I'm just going to select it. I want to mirror that across my base reference plane, and we'll put that on the other side. Now to make this one solid part, we're going to do a union. So I'm going to go up under our Boolean and do a union, select my two bodies, and make that solid. Now let's switch back into the ordered environment and take a look at our handle. When we get back into order, we can see how it's changed. Now we need to make some other edits to it. So what I want to do is actually drive something that's new for ST9 is a 3D sketch point. So you can now create points out in space with the 3D sketching commands. So I'm going to go ahead and do a dynamic edit on that feature. I'm going to select that point and we're going to drive the location with our X, Y, and Z coordinates up here. So what I need to do is I need to scoot that to the right a little bit. I'm also going to change the X location. It's kind of off-centered, so I'm going to make my X be 0. I'm going to make my Y direction also be 0. So now we're more in the center. And I want to drive that up so it goes up vertically. So instead of 50, I'm going to go up to 70, drive that point up, and make the change there. So you see we can drive now 3D sketching points. In this case, it's driving some other sketches that we created to make our handle. I want to edit then the width of the handle, so I'm going to go turn on that 3D sketch line that's being driven by the point, do a dynamic edit here, and I can drive that out and make my handle wider as well. Alright, so we're done editing our gear housing, so I'm going to do a close and return and get back into my assembly, and we can see our changes there. The next thing I want to do is edit into this motor mounting plate down here. What I want to do is take a look at a new design intent rule that was new in ST9. I'm going to come down here and I'm actually going to do a associative mirror first. So I'm going to select these features and I'm going to grab the inside faces of them as well, just to make sure we get the entire feature. And I'm going to mirror those across that plane that we see there in the middle of the part. So I'm going to go up and do the mirror command, and on the command bar we have the persist option. So with that option on, what it's going to do is it's going to maintain that relationship across this plane with the original geometry. So once I get that mirrored, if I come in here and try to move one of those faces now, you'll notice it moves the other side of my mirror with it. You'll also notice it's maintaining the thickness of each one of those little features. That's because of the new offset design intent rule. So I can see that over in my design intent panel on the right. That's going to maintain your rib thicknesses. If I turn that guy off by pressing the keyboard shortcut I, now you can see how each one of them gets thicker. So the new offset design intent rule will keep those thicknesses the same value for you. That also works if I come down here and do a rotate. So maybe I come and select some of the faces down at the bottom. So let me get here in a good orientation. So I'm going to grab these two faces here, move my steering wheel up to the top, and I want to rotate this 45 degrees. You'll notice the offset design intent rule is maintaining the thickness of those faces for me, and I can go to my 45 degrees. So a nice new design intent option that we have here in ST9. So we're done editing this part. Let's go ahead and close and return and go to our top level assembly. What we're going to do is change our display configuration. We're going to go to the waste bin. Now what we can do over here is we can thicken geometry without any kind of surfaces. So I'm going to create a new part in place, and I'm going to make this an ISO part. I'm going to save this guy real quick. So I can go in with the thicken command. I can change it to single. I can exclude internal loops if I want to remove all the holes on that face. I'm just going to pick this face right here. Then I get to pick how far I want to extrude it out. In this case, maybe I go 3 millimeters, and I get to choose what direction I want to go. I'm going to extrude outwards 3 millimeters and place that. I can then go in and create a new body, a new design body, so I have a multi-body part here. I'm going to hide the original one just for right now. I'm going to go back in and do my thicken. We'll do single again. This time we're only going to use the internal loops though. So as I pick this face, you'll notice it's only going to pick the holes on the inside there. I can then extrude that guy out maybe 4 millimeters in the opposite direction. If I turn off the background components and turn on my other multi-body component, I can see those two pieces, and I want to union those together to make one solid part. So I'm going to union my two bodies. I have a solid part, and there we go. Maybe I want to apply a material to that. I can come in and apply a material, make it black so it matches the other components. And this I actually need to cut out because it's part of where the spout comes through. So I'm just going to extrude that guy back 10 millimeters and create the cutout. So just like that, without making any surfaces or anything like that, I can grab the existing geometry, thicken it, and get that component to fit perfectly the way that we need it to go. The next thing I want to look at is the new solid sweep command. To do this, I'm going to switch my display configuration again. We're going to go back to this component we looked at earlier. I'm going to do an edit in place. Now on this part, I have some key point curves drawn. And let me hide my 3D sketches. I have a tool path sketch drawn in there. And I also have a tool body. So what we can do is come up, and under our cutout command here, I can do a solid sweep. I'm going to select my path first, and then select my tool body. Since this is a cylindrical part, you notice it highlights the axis through the center cylinder of the part. If it wasn't a cylindrical tool head, you would just have to pick that axis. I can go ahead and accept that. I'm going to pick a plane to just lock onto, and then we'll go in and create that cutout. The tool will then follow the path, cut all the way through the model, and we see that it makes that perfect cutout in there for us. So a really nice option they've added here in ST9. Maybe we want to go in then and add some rounding, so I can do the round command, add some round to that feature, and I'm just going to deselect one of my edges. I'm going to round that off to 1 millimeter. And there we go. So again, a really nice new command to do things like mill operations, doing some sort of material removal on this model. The next thing we're going to look at is some enhanced patterning options here inside of Solid Edge. So I'm going to flip my model around. You'll notice we have some threads over here on the right. I want to put that on all of the other holes in here. So I've got some coordinate systems created at each one of those holes. I'm going to turn those on real quick. And I have my thread features created here just grouped together so I can select them all at one time. So now in the part environment under pattern we have the duplicate command. We have this in the assemblies before, but now we can do it in the part or sheet metal environment. I'm going to pick what I want to duplicate it from, in this case the coordinate system, and then I'll just go on and pick the other coordinate systems where I want to add that to. So you can see how quickly I can recreate those threads on the other holes, and just like that I'm done. So It's awesome now that we have that capability here in the part environment. So we're going to switch back into the assembly, and I'm going to change our display configuration here in a second. And we're going to flip to our housing here on the outside. And what I want to do is take a look at both of these parts. We're going to turn some sketches on. And we talked about in the PowerPoint, we have the option to create blocks now in the part. So I've already created some block sketches here. We can see a couple of them showed up here in the model over here at each one of these locations. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in a little rubber foot into each one of those locations. Now, I don't want to put them in there one by one, so we're going to do a duplicate component with each one of those instances. So I'm going to go into my parts library here. I'm going to bring that part in. I had capture fit applied to it, so I'm just going to quickly come in and place it into my model. So I'm going to select this face here. Let me zoom in. We're going to center it up on the hole and this hole. So now we're fully positioned. So I need to put that in all of these locations around the model and even over here on my side model. So I'm going to go in and select that feature. We'll go up and do a duplicate component. And I'm going to pick what I want to duplicate it from. In this case, it's the block. So then I can find all matching occurrences on the entire model. I can also come in and select this occurrence here on the other model as well and place one of them over there. So that's pretty cool that I can find all of the blocks everywhere, and even if they're on separate part files. So what I want to do is come in here and I actually want to make a quick edit. So I'm going to select this part, do an edit in place. We're going to grab this cutout here and I'm going to do a dynamic edit and change the value. I'm going to drive this from 120 to maybe 90. We'll go up and do a close and return, and we'll notice that that feature does update. The block is going to follow that cutout and then update the location of where I put that foot in there. So some really cool options there with the duplicate component and being able to use blocks. Some other enhancements that were new with ST9 are with the variable table. So if we go up and do peer variables, we can select one of the components since we're in the assembly here, and we can see all of the variables listed for that part file. At the top of the variable table, we can see some new options up there. We can see things like list view. In our case, maybe we want to go to structured view. And on that part now, I can see my synchronous pattern and then all of my ordered features. If we expand one of those features, in this case maybe block feet, we can see all of the components and variables listed underneath that sketch. So this sketch is being driven in this location. I can come in and maybe change our foot master and make this 90 degrees. You'll notice all of my other variables will update, and when I do an update all links, you watch the feet over on the model there, they'll all rotate to 90 degrees. We can also change that value to maybe 135 degrees. So after entering the value, we can come up and do an update all links and watch that update. Alright, so some good sorting options over here. Let's change back to a list view, which is more of what we might be familiar with. We also have some new custom sorting options. So I want to go in and do a custom sort. I want to sort by name first, and then I'm going to sort it by type. So we can add in two options here. I'm going to hit OK and allow that to sort. Now in this list, maybe we want to select a formula. So I'm going to go in to the formula option. In Math and Trig, a new option that was added in here is the pi function, which a lot of people ask for. But we also have the logic function. So we have if-then statements. So I can come in here and create a condition if I want to. If you'll notice in here, we already have one created, a logic function. If our distance is greater than 230, then we are going to add in an extra occurrence of the feet right in the middle of the model. So you can see there is a 0 or 1 at the end of this to suppress or not suppress that feature depending on if the value is greater than or less than 230. So if we come up here and change our foot distance value, which is what is being driven in that logic function, if we increase that to 250 and do an update all, then we can see the model updates and it adds an extra occurrence on the inside of our pattern there. So pretty cool logic functions now. If we want to, we can come in and turn on our assembly sketch. I can go edit then that duplicate component that we did, do an edit definition, and select that block as well. So I can pick a select to sketch, select that block, and then we'll get an occurrence in there as well. So some really nice features built into the new variable table in ST9. The next thing we're going to look at is sheet metal clash option that we have. So I'm going to switch to another display configuration, and we're going to open up this sheet metal part here. Now what we want to do is flatten this. So I'm going to go to the Tools tab, select Flatten, and I'm going to pick a face here to flatten this guy. So I'm going to select maybe this face and this edge, and we'll flatten it, and we get a warning now. So it'll let you know that it has some components that overlap and will clash with each other. So if we click OK, we can see there's some overlap down here. If you go in with Inspect, Geometry Inspector, we can see that we do have some overlaps, and we can see those areas highlighted here. Now that we know where those areas are located, we can go back in to the formed model and make a change to it and fix that clash. So we'll go back into the formed state here. We know that clash is over here on this flange. So with synchronous, I can grab that flange, I can move it with the steering wheel, and I'm going to line it up to this key point here. If we go back into our flattened state, we no longer get a message, and we don't have a clash anymore on our sheet metal model. So a new option there in ST9 to help detect clashes in our sheet metal files. Alright, I want to show you one more example. This one's the spiral curve command that was added here. So what I'm going to do is come in and create a new spiral curve. Under surfacing in the Helical Curve command, I can select where I want to create this at. I'm going to change the type to spiral, and there we can see that spiral type. Now this is obviously extremely tight here, so we're going to go in and change our option. Maybe we want to do radial pitch and turn. I'm going to change my radial pitch to something like 8 millimeters maybe. And the number of turns, maybe we want to do 5, something like that. We can pick whatever we want. We can have the direction go in or out. Maybe I want the direction to go in. Then we can go ahead and click OK and finish and create that curve. We can then use that curve for other features. So then I'm going to come in and turn on my feature here, and let me do a show on that. We're going to use that feature to create a cutout here. So I'm going to go back and do a solid sweep, which is a new command. I'm going to pick that curve, select my tool body, and it'll create that cutout. If we hide that curve, we can see our solid sweep. We can go back in and edit that curve if we want to. I can change the parameters. Maybe I want to change from a radial pitch of 8 to maybe 7, and click finish, and then our solid sweep updates to match. So a nice spiral option that we have added here in ST9. So that's all the time that we have for today. Just to kind of show you what's coming in the next part, we'll look at some enhancements in the assembly and draft environments, things like the assembly relationship manager, some custom occurrence properties, tolerance table in the drafting environment, hole count and callouts, some translator enhancements, including the SolidWorks associative drawing migration. We'll also look at the pack and go feature in detail, as well as the design manager. So that's it for part 1, and look forward to part 2 in a couple weeks. If you guys have any questions or topics for future LunchByte topics, please let me know. Once again, I appreciate your time. Thanks, and have a great day.
Ally PLM.